Good morning, everybody. I will start recording with the permission of Yossi Vardi, our honored guest here. And thank you all for joining us today. We have one more Café com Homus. This is a meeting between Brazil and Israel. Since we are not being able to travel, we are trying to connect all the people because we know that Brazil and Israel has a lot in common. We have so much synergy, especially when we are talking about innovation. So we started with our partners, our wonderful partners from Israel here, to do this kind of event. So thank you so much for being with us. I'm Maria Rita. I'm the Executive Director of Anjos do Brasil. Anjos do Brasil is a non-profit organization to foster angel investment. And I have so many members of our network, so many investors here with us. Welcome you all. But you are not here to listen to me. So I'm inviting Sahi to a brief introduction of himself and also the work that they do with the economic mission. And then we are going to hear from our guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria Rita. Bom dia a todos. Shalom. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here again with everyone. This is a great collaboration and partnership that we have in place with Anjos do Brasil. My name is Tzachi Raich. I'm the Economic Council here in São Paulo, and I manage a trade mission which generally connects between the Israeli and the Brazilian ecosystem. We do this with different types of activities, whether they are delegations, events, specific B2B scouting projects that we do. We invest a lot in infrastructure. And nowadays, with the pandemic out, we basically transform majority of our activities and services to the digital world, exactly like we're doing right now. And we are here to help and connect and create opportunities, both for investment and for different business opportunities. So with this, I would like to invite our prestigious guest, Yossi Vardi, which is one of the most respected and experienced entrepreneur and investor in Israel. And with this, I will invite Yossi to the Zoom stage. Yossi, the stage is yours.
Hi, good morning in Brazil. Good afternoon in Tel Aviv. I'm delighted to meet again a group of Brazilians. To be very frank with you, I rather do it in the evening over a nice dinner in Tel Aviv at the beach, which is the place where you best have serious business meetings. But because of the current circumstances, we will need to use the wonders of modern telecommunication and do it over Zoom. It's very nice to see all of you. I suggest that we will divide the time this afternoon to two parts. I will give you, like in 20 minutes, some overall survey of areas which are, I think, maybe of interest. And then I suggest that the bigger part of the meeting we will devote to Q&A, questions that you will be asking. I have only one request from all the people which are hiding behind their name signs. It will be for me much better experience to see your face, because I see you like you see me now, which is not really very, very appealing. So those of you who are not too shy, and I know you Brazilians usually are very nice, attractive people, so don't be ashamed, put your pictures, and if you don't like, you can put feel of disgust on your face or something, so I can see the emotions. What I would like to talk this afternoon is to answer a question which I'm being asked every week number of times. And the question is being asked by continuous parade of visitors to Israel. You know, these days we have a never-ending parade of visitors, head of companies, investors, head of states, entrepreneurs, CEOs of large companies. All of them are coming to Israel, and they have, either they ask, what are you putting in the water to your young people that they become so innovative and so creative? And those who are not asking what we put in the water, ask us what we give them to smoke. But these are the two questions which I see. What the hell is going on? How come that we, at the end of the day, we are a very small country, you know, we are 8.9 million people. The areas of Israel within the Green Line boundaries is 20,000 square kilometers, which I think it's 0.0000001% of the area of Brazil. And you know, I met my good friend Israel Klabin. Some of you, Israel, are you here by any chance? No, I don't see your name. I met him in the Pantanal, and we took a drive to meet his brother. By the time we reach his brother in Israel, you can travel through half of the country. So Brazil is very big, and we are a very small country, but yet we have a very active high-tech entrepreneurship ecosystem. And the question which is of prime interest to the world is how this is being achieved. What is the magic? What is the secret sauce? What do we do? And different people are offering different explanations to this. To this question, people are offering different answers. Some people say it's because of the level of education. Some people are saying it because of the available of finance. Some people are saying it's because of the government policy. Some people are saying it's because of the technology in the defense, which is spill over to the civilian industry. All these answers are correct, but you have all the things which I mentioned. You have them in different other countries, and the question why we have it in Israel. By the way, do you hear me or you are not hearing me? Okay.
We are hearing you very well. I think just one person has a problem. You can go on.
Those who don't hear me, please raise your hand. Okay, nobody raised the hand, so everybody hears me. Okay. So I would like to suggest some other answer. First of all these answers are true, but they are only part of the story. You know, all these answers are like the fuel and the air which goes into the carburetor of a car. But you have it in Germany, you have it in Japan, you have it in many countries. The question is where you get the spark, which motivate the people to take all these inputs and translate them into startups. In 2020, we got 730 new startups. And by the way, the peak of number of startups was in 2016, about 1,000 new one. It's now going a little bit down. I will explain to you why, because the industry is maturing and it moved to large companies. We are now creating unicorns, like one after the other. And this comes on the account of small startups, but still 730 startups in 1 year It's a lot. By the way, the amount of funding which went to Israel in 2020 is 25% of the total amount which went into Europe. Can you imagine? Europe is, I don't know, 500 million people. We are 9 million to 2%. But the investment money was 25%. So what is there that the investment money is chasing? I would like to suggest to you that entrepreneurship and innovation and creativity, they are not technological phenomena, they are cultural phenomena. There is a certain culture which drives the people. And the culture starts at home. In the home, the young kid stays 18 years and is exposed to 24/7/12 hours a year to a brainwash of his parents, mainly his mother, who is trying to relive her life through her son, and she expects her son to deliver all the things she expected her husband to deliver, and he didn't. So at the age of 6, she tells him, when he goes to the first day in elementary school, she tells him, after all what we have done for you, asking you to bring 1 Nobel Prize is really too much. So the young kid knows that he goes to school and he has one mission, and this is to get at least 1 Nobel Prize to make his mother happy. To put it in plain English, the mothers are starting to drive their kids crazy from the age of 6, so they will accomplish. By the way, as we say in Israel, behind every successful man, there are 3 women. And the 3 women are a pushy mother, a wife which has nothing to wear, and a very surprised mother-in-law. And one of the major driving force of the young entrepreneurs to succeed is they are afraid of their mother-in-law that will tell their wives what your husband has done with all the savings for my grandchildren education. He spent them on this startup, and this is crazy. So here you must work very hard to make it successful. So one component of the ecosystem, which is very critical, is the value system in the family, the quest to accomplish, and this approach the level of insanity in Israel, and the mothers have a special way how to embed it in the kids. My mother, for instance, always complained to me. She said, why all her nephews and nieces are geniuses, and I am the only idiot in the family, and she has to be the mother of the idiot. And though she finished maybe 8 years of education, she was very curious, and she always told me she was very interested in genetics, and she told me, I will tell you why you are stupid and all your cousins are geniuses, because they are not contaminated with the genes of your father. So this was her explanation why they are smart and I'm an idiot. And of course, she tried to challenge me that I will go and try harder. Other than the family, there is a number of other elements which we don't have the time to mention all of them. I would like to suggest one more, and this is Israel is a very small country, as I said, less than 9 million people, and we know that we have to support each other, that if we don't support each other, we cannot sustain. So there is an unsigned contract that the in every industry, the people of the industry have to contribute to the well-being to the industry, which means that if you compete with me, but you need help and you come to me to ask for help, I must respond. I cannot tell you go to hell. So we work together in many, many instances, much more than in other cultures. And this is something, let's call it a much higher level of solidarity. And this is very powerful when it comes to startups and high tech, because you have to bear in mind that when a young guy starts a startup, usually they do it 2 or 3 people, and usually they're very young, not much experience, but they have to deal with issues like hiring people, employing people, managing people, developing a product, creating quality control, dealing with marketing, dealing with sales, raising funds, solving logistic problems, 3 guys. So you cannot do it alone. You have to rely, at least on the beginning, on the help of other people. And in Israel, you have really a norm that people have to help each other. By the way, I want to mention that what this cultural phenomena didn't start with the high tech. If you look into the development path of Israel, you know, the history of Israel, the last 73 years, or even before the creation of the state in the 40s or 30s of the former century, you see that the whole development of Israel is a story of one long startup, you know, developing the kibbutzim and the industry and the agriculture and the defense. We started with nothing and we built it. So the culture of daring, of willing to take risk, of jumping into the water and executing is very common in Israel. In this generation, it has the shape of the high tech, but the culture, the parents of the current generation of high tech geniuses have done the same in other areas. So this is part of the culture. So if you want to understand what's going on in Israel, you have to understand the culture. And for that reason, you can adopt some of the things that we are doing, and some of the things, you know, are very local and relate to the local industry. Few words about the state of the industry in the Corona time. In the Corona, there was a big move all over the world to more digital lifestyle and to more digital execution. So the sector at large benefited in the world and also in Israel. And right now we are in the midst of number of companies either going public either by IPO or by being acquired by spec companies. So right now the industry is flourishing. I cannot tell you how long it will continue. I guess it has to do also with the large amounts of money that governments are pouring into the capital market, which create availability of funds. I think I will stop here because I already spoke 20 minutes. I know that there are many things which I didn't cover, but I would like to give you the chance to ask questions. So thank you for listening. And now I suggest, Itzik, if it makes sense, to open the floor to Q&A.
Yes, definitely. And I see that we already started receiving questions from the crowd. So, Lou, you want to manage the questions?
Yes. Maria Rita and I will make the questions. Thank you so much. And Yossi, thank you for your explanation on the ecosystem. This cultural thing on solidarity and the home environment to grow entrepreneurship is something that we can feel whenever we go to Israel. So thank you for this. And my question to you would be regarding your entrepreneurial career. You started your career in 1969, being an entrepreneur in digital environment, in internet. And how do you feel that the scenario has changed throughout the years?
You know, when I'm ashamed to say it, when I started my career as entrepreneur in '69, you didn't have personal computers, you know, there were very few computers in the whole country, and all of them were huge and didn't have any power to speak about or any memory. The general attitude was the same, you know, you had to take risk, etc. But technology was, there were no transistors, you know, when I started it was with vacuum tubes. So it looked very, very archaic, but the nature of the human being, you know, and the ambitions and what motivates people was the same. So I started my career by creating a software house together with some childhood friends of mine. We were the 5th software house which was created in Israel. And after a few years, we became the biggest in the country. Don't be impressed. We reached 300 people, and that made us the biggest software country in the area, in the software house in the country. Then I spent some 12 years in the government as a government official, and then I went back to my love, which is high-tech companies. I created a number of companies in electro-optics and in energy, etc. And then in '96, my oldest son, who was a very talented kid, but let's say he and the education system in Israel didn't see eye to eye, and they tossed a coin, and it fell on the tail, which meant that my son was expelled from the education system. He never finished high school until today, which for me, being Jewish mother, gender-wise, sex-wise, I'm a male, but gender-wise, I'm a Jewish mother. To have a son who didn't finish high school was devastating. But in '96, he came to me with 4 of his friends. They told me they have an idea and they need some funding. And I asked them, what is the idea? They said, no, we cannot tell you the idea. It's secretive. So it gives you an idea of the level of trust which I enjoyed from my family. And because I had guilt feelings, you know, I knew that he didn't finish high school for something awful which I've done to him, which I couldn't put my finger, but I knew that it was because of me. I gave them a little bit of money. And then after 4 months, they showed me a product which was the first ever instant messenger on the internet called ICQ, which became very popular in Brazil. Brazil, I think, was like the 2nd or 3rd country to adopt it. I'm now talking 1997. So whenever I come to Brazil, I meet few people who tell me I met my wife over ICQ. So this is how I became involved in entrepreneurship. After then, we sold the company to AOL after 19 months, which was a very celebrated deal, which turned all of us to geniuses, and tall and blonde and smart and blue eyes and thin. And then I invested in another 86 internet companies. Some of them have done very nicely, and many of them disappeared, vanished, lost all the money, went bankrupt, belly up, turned to zero in either embarrassing or stupid, or both stupid and embarrassing circumstances. Luckily, I had also a good part of exit, because if I would have only losing companies, I don't think that the government of Israel would have invited me to talk to you. So that's the story in a nutshell.
It's a wonderful story. And I always remember, Yossi, the first time that we met, that you told me about ICQ, and you said, it's wonderful because we saw them, and everybody here in Israel understand that they could also do that, that it's possible to create a new startup, to sell them. And you know, Brazil always loves Israeli products, not just ICQ, but also ways. So it's very nice to have this kind of connection. And talking about that, we have a question from Ricardo Sonderman. He's also an investor from Anjos Brazil, and he asks you, a lot said about Israel startups. To be effective, what's the best way to engage business between Brazilian and Israeli startups, to be partners, or exchange technologies, so both can benefit from it? What's the path to collaborate, not compete, and both make money? What do you think about that? How we can collaborate more?
Yeah, okay. Luckily enough, because Israel is very small, we have practically no domestic market. I mean, we have domestic market, but it's negligible. So in Israel, we are geared, we are tuned to work with out-of-the-country companies. You have here Luciana and Itzhak. They work for a government agency, which is called the Ministry of, I don't know, they change the names of the ministry
Economy and Industry.
every 2 weeks, and they change the minister every week. So, but I think it's now called the Ministry of Economy. But for ages, as much as I can remember myself, they have export division, and they put people all over the world. Not only they put people, but they go to the government and they signed always packages of beneficial agreements regarding free trade, regarding investment, regarding double taxation. So we really, I think we really wrote the book on international collaboration. However, at the end of the day, the government can lay the background, can lay the infrastructure, can create the ecosystem, but it's up to the business people to come and meet each other. And the true answer to your question is to meet the people, you know, to either to go to Israel or for the Israelis to go to Brazil and to meet with the people. And then I think there will be a lot of opportunities. And already by now, there are quite a bit of business going on. Itzik, what was the trade last year between Brazil and Israel?
A bit over $1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion, which means that Brazil is what, the 8th, 10th trade partner of Israel?
9th. It's in the 9th place of trade partners.
Yes, look, I made a very good estimate, you have to admit. 9th place in spite of the huge distance. I think there is, it was announced that the direct flight between Israel and São Paulo will start sometime.
We had it active more or less until the pandemic broke out, and we were hoping that towards the end of this year it will be relaunched.
So what I would like to tell the Brazilian business people, go to Israel, pretend that you are going to do business, but first of all, go to enjoy the city and the beaches and the people and the markets and the culture, because really Tel Aviv is a great city. And also while you are in Tel Aviv, you can do also business. And I have to tell you something very frankly, the Israelis are tough business people. You are doing business with Israel, you have to be with all your senses. And you better don't drink alcohol before you go to the meeting. You have to stay sharp. But at the same time, they are, I think, one of the best hosts. The Israelis like people and they are like to host them, and everybody immediately is becoming your friend and invite you to the home, to the Shabbat dinner, and take you and force you to go with him to visit his grandsons, and you cannot get rid of them. So this is also part, I think, of the fun. It's really, and I'm not exaggerating, Itzik, if you don't agree with me, I invite you to challenge, but I think that everybody is being treated as a remote cousin. So these are the different faces. It's people like to come to Tel Aviv because it's a lot of fun. One of the deficiencies, it's not the cheapest city in the country. This I have also to tell you. So here you have the plus, and I forgot the most important thing. The food is very good. And you know, before the world became so careful, I used to say that the girls are the nicest in Tel Aviv and in the world, but today you cannot talk like this anymore, so I'm not saying it anymore. But let me say that the persons are very nice. I think this was politically correct, what I say. I left everybody in a sense of shock, I say.
One thing that I would like to add is the sense of solidarity that you mentioned before to this question. So if you meet one person in Israel, they will introduce you to other two persons. So go to Israel and do business in the chutzpah way, right?
No, I think, look, I think it's our responsibility to say that the business people in Israel are not holy. You know, they are business people like anywhere else, because we want that the people which are doing business will be happy with the business. Sometimes they become too emotional, and this is not good. So it's like doing business in New York or like doing business in any other place.
I would also want to partially answer the question from a different perspective. There is also great infrastructure between Brazil and Israel for collaborations. We have two agreements that we signed between the Israel Innovation Authority and two parallel entities here, FINEPI and Embrapi. And you can join forces and do a joint R&D products or projects together, and also get backed, financed by the relevant parties, whether the Israeli side from Israel Innovation Authority and the Brazilian side from FINEPI or Embrapi. So there is also infrastructure in place that can facilitate such collaborations.
Yeah, and also if you come to Israel, you can find a lot of ex-Brazilians in the business community, which can explain to you the local culture, etc., or can work with you, etc.
Yes. There is another question here from Cassius Ina. What do you recommend to investors that is most important to look when evaluating startups?
Okay, that's a very good question. You guys really want me to give you all my secrets, and then you will compete with me and get me out of business. You know, my mother, in 1948, my father went to the Independence War, and my mother developed a small restaurant to keep herself and my brother and me, you know, to provide to us. And she was a very good cook, of traditional Middle Eastern Jewish food. I don't know if you know this genre of food, but Middle Eastern Jewish food is a food which doesn't have smell and doesn't have taste. It has only have consistency, and it made out of the cheapest part of the animal. This is a totally different story. Nevertheless, everybody asked her how you cook this and what is the recipe, and she protected the intellectual property by always giving misleading ingredients. You know, for instance, if you wanted to have an ice cream recipe, she would tell you you have to put parsley and garlic and pepper in the ice cream or something which will spoil. So when you ask me what I'm looking, I tend to give you some misleading answers, you know, so the good companies will be left to me. No, I will tell you, again, this is one of the questions which I'm asked the most, how you select where to invest. When I started my career, I used to look for great ideas. You know, great ideas, the idea which will change the world. And then I found very quickly that it's not about the ideas, it's about the execution. Ideas, you can get 10 great ideas per dollar, but the same idea can be executed by Apple in a wonderful way, and by Nokia, which is a great company, not in a wonderful way. And the success or the failure is by the execution. And execution, the raw material for execution, the engine for execution, is people and their character. And very soon I realized that if I want to succeed in business, I have to decide how to select the people. And I began to look, I'm summarizing up 52 years of doing startups. 52 years, I'm giving you what I learned. It's a shame it took me so long to learn so little, but these are essentials. When I look for people, I look for three things. Three things. Number one, I want them to be top talent. Top. I mean, top talent. If you hear that this guy in São Paulo is a top talent in something, go and hire him. And don't tell him what to do. Tell him, here is a budget, go and spend it in the best way you think, because he's the top talent, not you. It's like if Spielberg come to you and tell you, I want you to invest in my company, just write him a check. Don't ask him what is the topic of the movie and who is going to be the movie star, etc. No. Rely on it. So number one, top talent. But top talent is not enough. You need another two things. Number two, you need that the people will be nice, will know how to work in team, will know how to behave. Because if the top talent is an asshole, excuse me for the expression, then nothing good is going to come out of it. And your life is reflection of the quality of the people which surrounding you. Your life, the quality of your life is as good as the people you are surrounding with. And you don't want to be surrounded by hooligans and by people who suck the oxygen from everybody else in the room, etc. So talent and virtues, character. And the third thing, you want them to be passionate. You want them to be enthusiastic. You want them to love what they do. You want them to dream on what they are doing from the morning to the evening, because passion is the engine which drive the people and what people are willing to do when they are motivated by passion is 100 times more powerful than what you can do by paying the money. So passion is very important. So I'm looking for teams of passion, talent, and character. If I find such a team, I would invest. And yet, nevertheless, as I mentioned, I invested in 86 internet companies, or I didn't mention it, I don't remember. Out of those, 30 companies went away. I lost my money, it's disappeared, created embarrassment and shame upon me, because in the startup situation, one thing is certain, and this is that nothing is certain. You may fail, you will fail, because the risk is high and many people are in the space. So you have also to know how to get a hit in your belly. So now you know how to invest.
It's wonderful because it's people, people, people in the beginning, the middle, and at the end of the day. It's always
100%.
people.
It's always.
Mm-hmm. Always people. And one other thing that I want you to ask you, Yossi, you once said to me, I really remember that you don't like to follow on investments. So I always discuss with my investors about how to make a portfolio. Some people say it's important to make a follow-on to maintain my participation or not. How do you see that? What are the advantages and disadvantages of being just an early stage investor?
Yeah, okay. When you look on the value line of a startup, in the beginning, you need little funds, the risk is high, and the reward is high in terms of multiples. The valuation is low, not in terms of total sums, but in terms of multiple. If a startup will make it good, the people who put the first money will get very nice multiple, but this will happen in a lower probability than if they invest later. The farther you go at the lifeline of the company, you will need more money. The investment will be lower. I'm sorry, the multiple will be lower and the risk will be lower. So there are trade-offs. This description which I described actually define what is the profile of the investors in each part of the life of the company. In the beginning, usually you find the angel investors, which are putting smaller amount of money. They do it much faster, and they are willing to take higher risk because they get bigger multiple in numbers, not in total sums. Then come the VCs, which raise big chunks of money. They raise hundreds of millions of dollars. They have to put big investments. They cannot put investment of $200,000 because then they will have 500 investment. They will not be able to manage it. So one way how the investors are distributed are according the nature of the type of investment. Either it's angel or it's VC. By the way, the angel investors usually are the second generation of investors in a certain country, certain ecosystem. The first angels are those entrepreneurs, founders, which were able to do exit. They do exit, they take the proceeds, and they go to invest in some other companies. Until you have good number of angel investors, you cannot have an ecosystem. So you have, in the beginning, you have few founders, then you have few founders which have done exit, then you have some of them become angel investors. And when the angel investors begin to have bigger investors, the VC get their chance to invest. Now, regarding follow-up and help, usually the investors are trying to help the investees. Sometimes they are able to help them, and sometimes they are just confusing them. And it took me many years, I'm ashamed to tell you how many years, to think to myself that I invest in these guys because of their talent, not because of my talent. I don't invest in them because of their talents. And maybe I should leave them to do what they understand. And I began to realize that my added value sometimes is positive, but sometimes is negative. Sometimes I give them good advices, and sometimes I give them bad advice, and I became much less hands-on investors. Actually, when I invest, I tell my investees, this is my phone number, I give it to you, so in any case that you need investment or door opening or some connection, don't call this number because I'm not going to help you. I'm not your investment banker and I'm not your marketeer. So they will not have expectations. Other than one thing, there is one area where I know that I can provide added value, and this is areas where you need to gain business experience, like negotiations or resolving legal issues, etc. This is where experience come to play. But in many parts of the high-tech, experience is not an asset, it's a liability. It's a baggage because it blocks your way to think originally, to find totally new ways, etc. So, Maria, when you ask about helping startups, one has to be very careful, because sometimes from too much help, you can choke the young entrepreneur.
No,
Yeah.
perfect. Wonderful. If I may ask you one more question for you, and then I will let Luciana do, because I know that she wants to ask a very interesting one. I want to ask you, some people are saying that Israel is moving from the startup nation to the scale-up nation. How do you see that? It's really changing the landscape in Israel. They are being able to do companies that are bigger and that are really scaling up or not? How do you see that?
Maria, you spend too much time in Israel. You know too much. We will have to kill you eventually. You know all our secrets.
No, please, no, don't kill me. I just want to keep going.
Okay, no, that's a very good question. As you know, it's the number one topic of a big national debate. Should we do exit? Should we scale up? What should we do? So first of all, let me summarize what was the situation until like 5 years ago, okay? Until 5 years ago, the typical behavior was that Israelis build a company to 200, 300 people, and then a big American company in the beginning, and afterwards American or Chinese or European company would come, buy the startup, and turn it into a center of excellence of that company in Israel. In Israel, we have today about 400 R&D centers of the best and the most famous high-tech companies, starting with the obvious name like Google and Facebook and etc., and companies like Oracle and Cisco and Broadcom, and the list goes on, on and on and on, beautiful list. All of them have R&D centers. Most of them have Israeli, maybe all of them, Israeli heads, and it works very nice. And I was a great believer in this event. I used to say we don't have to grow a company, we better bring here Intel. Intel invested in maybe 70 Israeli companies, and they come with large funds. They just announced that they are building a campus in Haifa with the investment of $200 million. These companies bring funding, bring understanding of the market, bring international network of sales office, and they accelerate the whole industry. So this alliance of a commando R&D plus a mammoth, a very big marketing machine and strategic machine worked extremely well, and I think that is the foundation of this miracle of the Israeli high-tech, the great collaboration of small, young Israeli companies with large, great companies which appreciate the manpower and the talent and come here to use it. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't give, for me, what difference it makes if the owners of the companies are shareholders of the Israeli stock market, or the owner of the company is a company called Amazon or Google. I don't think it makes any difference. It creates employment, the employees are paying the income tax, the industry accelerates, and Amazon can accelerate faster than a local company which is registered in the market. However, in the last few years, and especially in the last 2 years, there was a major change, which I think it's still too early to decide whether it's stable or it's just a phenomena. And this is the creation of the unicorns. The creation of the unicorns. Israel became like a moving belt. How you call this belt? Assembly belt of unicorns. I think right now there are about 45. How many unicorns are now? It's it.
Around this number, 40 or 45. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And if it's not, they don't know anyhow, you know. So we can say any number we want. They will believe us. So, no, but I think the number is about 40, 45. Now think for unicorn is any number between 1 billion and 10 billion. You know, let's say it's $2 billion. So we are talking about $100 billion valuation, which came to 45 companies. This changed the rules of the game, and this lent itself to create bigger companies. However, I must say with all honesty that I don't know if it is sustainable. And if it is sustainable or not depends on a number of things. The major one is how long first the US government and then other government will be willing to continue to pour funds to the financial markets in order to keep the markets viable. We don't know. Another thing that we begin to face in Israel is even bigger shortage of employees. Bigger shortage of employees. I don't know if you know, but there are thousands of software engineers. Somebody told me 20,000, I don't know if the number is true, which work for Israeli companies in Ukraine. And you have other ones in Romania, and you have other ones in India, and you will be surprised to learn that there are 1,200 engineers which are doing terrific job for multinationals which are located in Israel, which live in Hebron, in Ramallah, in Nablus, in the Palestinian areas. And they wake up in the morning and they have a job to do, they are well paid, and they work, and it works very nicely, and it works harmonically, and all the Israelis employers, about 100 of them, are very happy with the quality of the work and the level of commitment and level of engagement of these young Palestinian guys. And if you ask me, I think this is the hope for the region. You know, when it will not be 1,200, but when it will be 25,000, the whole region will look differently.
Yeah, amazing. There are two questions here that they were already answered regarding ideas, execution, people, and etc. So we are gonna skip them. And we are gonna go to our last question, unfortunately, because of the time. But we see your willingness to promote innovation until today, and we see your involvement with DLD, with cybertech in Dubai. How do you see the importance of fostering the innovation as you do?
You know, it's a passion of mine. I enjoy it. You know, what I can do in my age, you know, I can take a salad of the things which I've done right and the things which I've done wrong, and try to empower the young generation and enjoy to see how they do it much smarter and much better than me. I started to do it in Israel maybe in 2003 to cultivate the local industry, which was the local internet, the digital industry, which was much smaller. And then people around the world were interested in it. So I started to do this event, which is totally pro bono. You know, it's not my business, and it's not a money offering. And it gives me great pleasure and satisfaction. And also I can go after it to the mirror and look at the mirror and say to myself, Vardi, you are a great guy. You know, the only problem is that when I ask my wife after such an event, when I look at her and I tell her, Talma, how many great people you really met in your life? She look at me and she give me this look and she says, one less than what you think. But other than that, it's okay.
Difficult. The women in Israel are not easy. Yossi, it's always a great honor to have you with us. As I told you, I really hope that the pandemic is controlled and we can see each other personally next year. Either in Israel or in Brazil, you are invited to. And I'll also give the floor to Maria Rita and Itzhak to give some final words. Thank you so much, Yossi.
Sure.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to hear from you. It's always wonderful to see the experience. I always say that angel investment is not only knowledge, but it's experience. We have to learn by doing, and you are a wonderful example of that. Thank you so much. And as Luciana said, I'm looking forward to meet you and to know a lot more about Israel without being killed, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for your interest and for the time.
Thank you.
Antonio,
please.
I see that Antonio knows how you upload in Zoom. You know how you upload in Zoom? You do like this.
Wonderful.
Toda raba, Yossi. As always, a great pleasure to hear you. I always, you know, I hear the story and it so resembles to what I felt growing up in Israel with pushy parents. So everything is true. Thank you again for the time. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and stay tuned for our next Café and Homus event coming soon.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Come and visit us.
Thank you.